Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. All together, everyone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Haribo, 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 Goda Haribo, Nitai Goda Haribo, Haribo, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Namaste Saraswati Prasthati Desatane Om Agena Taminandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksu Sumilitanjana Tasmaya Sri Gurave Namah Sri Caitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Veda Vitale Sayam Upa Kadamayam Dadakti Sakandam Sikam Vansakalpatruvascha Kripasambuvayavucha Titanam Pavanigo Bhaisanayan. Do you know if this is in the right place? Was it working from here or does it need to be somewhere else? Let's see if this is it. With the book. No mistake. Keep moving the tape. Caritamrta, and this is in Madhya Lila, chapter 5, where Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is very close to Jagannath Puri now. In chapter 6, he enters Jagannath Puri. But in chapter 5, they visit Katwa, he and his companions of Nityananda Prabhu, Jagannanda Pandit, Devananda Pandit, and Mukunda Datta. They visit Kathak and they see Shakshi Gopal, who is now in the village. There's a name of the village, but the train station is called Shakshi Gopal. So we've read so far how, does anyone remember anything from what we read last week? That's of course a very difficult question. Yes.
Brahmana, so the younger of Brahmana that is going to give his daughter to the younger Brahmana.
Do you know where they were?
So they were traveling from Katra?
No, they were traveling from South India, Vidyanagar, and they traveled all over to many pilgrimage places, and then they were in Vrindavan, and this deity of Gopal was in Vrindavan. And the young Brahmana had taken such care of the older Brahmana as they were walking and walking and walking, that the older Brahmana, in gratitude, decided to give to the younger Brahmana something that was very dear to him. Because when we have something that's very dear to us, we're very careful about who we give it to, whose care we put it under. So it's such an interesting point that will come up later. He decided to give his daughter This Brahmana had taken, that's another problem. Of the old still walking and walking and walking, but the older Brahmana, in gratitude, decided to give some technological issue. Radhaman, do you know what that was? Okay. Shall we continue? Okay. So, what book were we reading again? What was it again? Oh, that's right, Caitanya Caritamrta. And we know, what was the story we were reading? About Shakshi Gopal. How do you say that with a Bengali accent? I'll have to ask your father. Huh? How will we say that with a proper Bengali accent? Shakshi Gopal. Okay. And what does that, we would pronounce it, us North Indians, Shakshi or Shakhi. Shakshi means the witness. So Gopal, who becomes the witness. But at this point, he's just known as Gopal because he hasn't yet witnessed what is going to happen. So the older Brahmana was very, very wealthy. He was aristocratic, coming from a very prominent family. And the younger Brahmana was poor and just, you could say, ordinary. So when the older Brahmana, out of the deep affection in his heart, and the deep, how his heart was so touched, he was so touched by the purification that occurred with the pilgrimage. He was so touched by being in Sri Vrindavan Dham. His heart was softened so much, and he felt so much gratitude. That was the cause of his offering his daughter. So, and this we see many times when people go to the Holy Dham. They have that fortune of visiting that place, and their best moods come out. And in Vrindavan, we've seen, especially after our retreats, everyone's so fired up and inspired by the atmosphere of being in the association of devotees, hearing and chanting in the shelter of Giriraj Govardhan. Everyone is so inspired. And then when it's time, we have a final meeting, and we have to sort of break the very difficult news to everyone, because everyone's thinking, from now on, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be this. And then we have to say, from now on, you'll probably be sort of like you were when you get back to your house, like you were before you left, except that you'll have had this experience. And it's such an amazing occurrence that all, like, the way I think of it is like 50% of your inspiration by the time you're on the Yamuna Expressway to Delhi is gone already. When you're in the traffic and the hunking and the this and the that, and by the time you're in the airport, 60, 70%, 80%, and then when you have to go through security, but still something remains. And that which remains is a taste and a desire. And that taste and desire is our wealth. A taste and desire, that's our wealth. Our wealth means that which is truly valuable, because that will eventually just grow and grow and grow and grow until it takes over our consciousness. And the taste for Krishna service and relationship with Krishna, and that desire, I want to serve Krishna, I want to be with Krishna, that will ultimately take over. It will take its time perhaps, but that will take over, and that's just what we want. Because it takes that tatraloyam apimulam, that desire, that intense desire, that greed, to cause Krishna to reciprocate and give us the circumstances that will help us increase that desire. And then we have to take advantage of those circumstances. There are opportunities that Krishna presents. This happened to me so many times that that I'm chanting and chanting and chanting. And then at some point, sometimes, my mind captures something about the mantra. Sometimes I think of it like I'm trying to chase the mantra, and then suddenly the mantra stops, the Hare Krishna mantra stops and grabs me, say. So, and then what I've seen when that happens, there's no struggle to hear the mantra, to hear Krishna's holy names, Hare Krishna. And it becomes very, very easy and natural. And then I watch my mind say, oh, now I can listen all the time. And therefore, why bother listening now? I can listen all the time or anytime I want, not understanding that was a gift. Somehow or another, Krishna had allowed me to be able to hear the mantra, and then taking it for granted and thinking it was mine and my capacity and my ability, and thinking, well, I can do it any time, that means I can do it at another time, and therefore if I can do it at another time, why do it now? So then I let my mind wander, and then Krishna takes away, he retracts his gift. And then I find, I can't do it anymore. So what is it called? What would you call it? I mean, there's many words. When someone acts like that, like I just described me acting, what would you call that? Of course, you don't want to insult me too much, but so I'll just insult myself. It's ungrateful. It's not understanding. It's a gift. There's pride there. Yeah, reality breeds contempt. Reality? Huh? Familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt. But there wasn't even enough time for me to get familiar. I could do this anytime. So therefore, why do it now? Has that ever happened to you? Okay. If it happens again, you say, I'm not sure I can do it anytime. So let me do it now. That's called the anti-procrastination movement. TPM. So the younger Brahmana, when he heard that offer or fortune or that gesture of gratitude from the older Brahmana, he said, this is very unusual. These things don't happen. Especially even today, but especially in older days, people would only marry if they were on an equal social status. Now, that would, there was very practical reasons for this. And one of the reasons is that to be married to someone who thinks the same way you do is very rare. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. But usually they think so much better than you do. Yes. I'm sure we're huh? No, actually I learned that from one devotee who married a girl in his same caste, and he said it's interesting to be with someone who thinks the same way. And then the other reason is what happens if the girl, like in this case, I explained this last time, is of a higher position, then that doesn't work either, because she won't be in the mood of serving her husband and taking care of him, but rather the opposite mood will be there, that, excuse me, I'm here, come now, I have some errands for you to do. And I've also heard that expressed by devotees that I knew, and it was so subtle that I mentioned this last week, that someone the Punjabis have different levels of kshatriyas. So one was, I don't know how many there are, different levels there are, but how many do you know, happen to know offhand? Unlimited or?
there are 3 different regions, and every region has about 7 of them. So
Yeah, it was like 7. That's what he told me. So he was fourth grade in one, and Kshatriya, and she was 1 grade above him, and there was automatically a sort of a pride that entered and made it more difficult. In any case, there is good reason for these systems to take place. And on the other side, because these systems seem so improper nowadays and so forced, and people really want to get married, they get married looking for that soulmate, that the love that will fill the emptiness in their heart, complete them, and that's also very rare when that occurs, and it's very romantic. It's very romantic. Romantic meaning overly sentimentalized. So much so that, and then there's the concept of the nuclear family. The perfection is to have the husband, the wife, and the two kids in their own house, and of course, what it ends up nowadays, first of all, it's called nuclear because it's so explosive. But aside from that, it's the wife, husband, the 2 kids. See, I mentioned the wife first there, Doug Turney. Notice, just wanted to bring it to your attention. Oh, yes, sorry. You want me to do it again? There's the wife, and then there's the husband, and there's the 2 kids. And what it is nowadays is the wife. There's 3 times I've done it. The wife, the husband, the 2 kids, and each of them on their own mobile phones, not looking at each other or communicating with all their friends in social media, and et cetera, and no relationship at all. Or the 50-inch screen in front of them. And then you still need a second TV because no one wants to watch what someone else wants to watch, or a third, or who needs a TV when you have your own mobile phone. In any case, and therefore so even though that system doesn't sound very attractive in one sense, but the system that's used now doesn't really work very well either, with 50% divorce rates, and the husband and wife maybe can deal with it, although it leaves a deep wound. But what about the kids? You know, they don't grow up in a I would say a more typical, natural way. So therefore, there is a psychological psychological expression that is pertinent in this regard, that if you are afraid of loneliness, don't get married. So that one takes a few seconds to sink in. So anyway, so he was saying, or as Prabhupada says in the last line of the purport, it was unheard of for an aristocratic person to offer his daughter to a person who is both uneducated and poor. The young Brahmana continued, since I am not a suitable bridegroom for your daughter, I render service to you only for the satisfaction of Krishna. It's seva, Krishna pritye. For Krishna's pleasure, I'm rendering service to you, not to get anything from you. How rare is that? How rare that anyone in this world does anything for the pleasure of another. How rare it is. And as it turns out, doing something for the pleasure of another gives us happiness. Serving brings us happiness because it's our constitutional position. And we long to be the master, we long to be the center, and that brings us the most loneliness and the most unhappiness. Because we think of ourselves as the center and as the Lord, but we can't convince anyone else that we're the center and that we're the Lord. So there we are in a self-created universe, where no one else lives. So of course it's going to be lonely. And what is that self-created universe where no one else really lives? What is that called? Who said that? Jack Cheney. Yes, that's exactly the word I was thinking of. The mind, that's called the mind. Material consciousness, the mind is the center of material consciousness. So it's interesting to also ask, this Brahmin was poor, or he was uneducated, he was born in a Brahmin family, do any Brahminical qualities? Does he seem to, he's uneducated. Brahmins are supposed to know Brahman, they're learned. So what qualities does he have? Does anything already come out? Do you know? It's humble, yeah. Selfless, serving, yeah. Excuse me? Sincere, yeah.
Kind.
Okay, but no one's in their mind-reading phase right now because I'm thinking of one. He's honest. Truthfulness is one of the, satyam is one of the special qualities of a Brahmana. Satyam, truthfulness. So he's saying, sir, I'm not a suitable bridegroom for your daughter. I render service to you only for the satisfaction of Krishna. And Prabhupada, in his purport, he explains the situation, something that doesn't come out just from the externals of the pastime. Externals of the pastime, I mean, they're just from what they're doing, because there's always two aspects. There's what we're doing and what our consciousness is while we're doing that thing. Because there are so many different levels that we can perform an activity on. We can do one activity for the pleasure of another, or we can do it to get something from them, or we can do it to trick them into thinking we're trustworthy. There's unlimited levels of consciousness. So Prabhupada says something about their consciousness now in the purport, because we've heard about how they were externally dealing. Prabhupada begins saying both Brahmanas were pure Vaishnavas. The younger man took special care of the older man simply to please Krishna, because that's what the verse says. Krishna pritye kori toma seva vyavahara. I'm performing these activities for Krishna's pritya, for Krishna's pleasure, to please him. So it's rare to do something to please anyone other than oneself, which is called selfishness, and selfishness brings no happiness, only the promise of happiness perhaps, but no true satisfaction to the heart. So it's rare that someone does something to please another, but even still rarer, someone does something just for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And no other karma, jnana, anavritam, no other avilas, no other desire other than to please Krishna. So these Brahmanas were actually on that level. In Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 21st chapter, the 21st verse of the 19th chapter of the 11th canto, Krishna says, Mad Bhakta Puja Vidikara. It is better to render service to my devotee. Thus, according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, it is better to be a servant of the servant of God. So Mahaprabhu himself said that, and what's the famous verse that he would say at Rath Yatra? Gopi Bhatta Parakamalaya Dasa Das Naham Vipro Nachanara Bhachi Napi Vaisha. I'm not this, all these, thank you, all these external identities are not me. They all have to do with my bodily situation, but what am I? I am Gopi Bharta, the servant of the servant, dasa, dasana, das, the servant of the servants of those who serve the gopis, the Braja gopis. In other words, to serve. And what do the gopis think? That they are the servants of Krishna. And what does Krishna think? That he's the servant of his devotees. So everyone, even Krishna, becomes attracted to service. And that's the position of Sri Advaita Acharya, to teach us that and to show us how things of this material world should be used for service. That's the great mercy of Advaita Acharya, Sadashiva. Thus, according to the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, it is better to be a servant of the servant of God. One should not try to serve Krishna directly. Why? Of course, we could easily answer, because it's better to serve those who are servants. Why? Yes. Why? Make mistakes. Krishna, did you want to say something? Yeah. All true. Anyone else want to venture? Yes? A little bit louder though.
In the Gita, Krishna says that the devotee of his devotee is his
Yes. It's the song of one of the Puranas. So, yeah. He who is my devotee is not my devotee, but he who is the devotee of my devotee. Vishnu Aradaram Param. I can't remember which, but it's, yeah. But why?
It gives Krishna more pleasure than his devotees are better than Bhakta.
Yeah. All good answers. But we see this with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Who does he have being near him all the time during his most intimate service and separation from Krishna, as Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar, who were so qualified, and serving them, Swarup Damodar, as Raghunath Das Goswami, who is so qualified, nothing to do with the material world practically. So how pure, and not only pure, because pure means the absence of impurities, but how filled with devotion, exactly in the mood of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, would one have to be completely close to him. And we saw this even with Prabhupada. You couldn't be close to Prabhupada. I mean, you could be physically close to him for a little bit, but unless you shared his mood, his spirit, you can't be close to anyone practically unless you have a similar spirit, confirmed by that bird. So how close do you have to be to Krishna? How pure you have to be, and in the same mood do you have to be that close to Krishna? How much you have to be fired to be close to fire. So who is going to say that they are qualified to be that close to the unlimitedly pure servants, direct servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? They have no other. So close, so that there's no disharmony. So one who thinks they're qualified in that way may not be as qualified as they think. So rather, the devotees take a humbler mood and think, this is the realm of Srila Prabhupada, of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, of Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, of Srila Bhakti Vinod. This is a realm that I can't even hear about it practically. You know, the level of their consciousness and what inspires them. Of Narottama Das Thakur, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, of Srinivasacharya Simananda, the six Goswamis. They all preferred to take a position. And even Mahaprabhu said that. So if Mahaprabhu is giving that example, then perhaps it's an example that we should follow. So that's my explanation. And all of the things that you all said was correct. And I see that usually devotees want to get closer and closer and closer and closer. But that's not usually the process. Of course, when you see the deities, you want to be close enough to actually be able to see them and not be distracted by everyone else what they're doing. But yes, I think you understand my point. Is it clear, Bhaswan? Yeah, okay. So he said, one should not try to serve Krishna directly. Prabhupada directly says it. A pure Vaishnava serves a servant of Krishna and identifies himself as a servant of Krishna. This is pleasing to Lord Krishna. It's the humble position and it's pleasing to Lord Krishna. Srila Narottama Das Thakur confirms this philosophy. Chadya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Sikeva. Unless one serves a liberated Vaishnava, he cannot attain liberation by directly serving Krishna. He must serve the servant of Krishna. So he continues speaking. Lord Krishna is very much pleased by service rendered to Brahmanas, and when the Lord is pleased, the opulence of one's devotional service increases. Bhakti sampadbhadaya, the opulence of one's own devotional service increases when one serves a Vaishnava, because as you all have said, that's more pleasing to Krishna. Here is Srila Prabhupada's purport. In this regard, we'll read from some of it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that the younger Brahmana rendered service to the older one with the purpose of pleasing Krishna. It was not a matter of ordinary worldly dealings. Krishna is pleased when a Vaishnava is rendered service. Because the younger Brahmana served the older one, Lord Gopal agreed to become a witness of the marriage negotiation in order to maintain the prestige of both devotees. So this is going to be revealed gradually. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu would certainly not like to hear about marital dealings unless such dealings were exchanged between two Vaishnavas. So this is the part of the proof that how do we know that they were pure Vaishnavas, is that Mahaprabhu was listening to it. And why would he bother listening to just an ordinary old marriage story? So Prabhupada speaks more about the difference between he talks about how generally Vaishnava sannyasis won't take part in marriage ceremonies, and then but Prabhupada said that he did because because he says our purpose is to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. We are giving all facilities to the general populace to take to Krishna consciousness. And in order to fix the devotees in concentration on the service of the Lord, marriage is sometimes allowed. We have experienced that such married couples actually render very important service to the mission. Therefore, one should not misunderstand when a sannyasi takes part in a marriage ceremony. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu took great pleasure in hearing about the marriage ceremony between the young Brahmana and the daughter of the elderly Brahmana. So it was one of the first times I saw Prabhupada at 26 2nd Avenue. There were 3 things that went on that Sunday. And one was the installation of the deities of Lord Jagannath. And they were installed in a very simple way with just chanting and no ceremony, just big Jagannath deities that were placed on the altar. And then the second thing was an initiation ceremony. And at that time, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami was initiated. And then there was another person named Jai Narayan initiated. And maybe there was another, but I don't remember. And also there was a marriage ceremony between Hansadutta and Himavati, some old devotees, servants of Prabhupada. So Prabhupada spoke in his lecture that ordinarily a sannyasi doesn't take part in marriage ceremonies because they're supposed to be detached from these type of things. But he said that because you have no one else and are dependent upon me, therefore I am taking part. And he performed the ceremony. So Prabhupada is basically saying, because he's giving a reason why, one of the elements of the proof of why we understand that they were pure Vaishnavas, one is that Mahaprabhu wouldn't hear of this if it was just ordinary dealings. And then he has to explain, if it's just ordinary dealings, why would a Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasi like himself sometimes take part in marriage ceremonies? So he explains that. Any questions up to this point? Or comments? Yeah.
You mentioned, we talked about how it's better to serve devotees of Krishna rather than offering service to Krishna directly. And just a few days ago it was like Shivratri, the Lord Shiva's appearance day. And I was listening to a few classes saying, he's like one of the greatest Vaishnavas.
Yes. Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu.
And I have some family friends who actually worship Lord Shiva a lot more. How can I sort of help them to understand that the purpose of serving Lord Shiva is actually for the pleasure of Krishna? And
good luck.
it might be sidestepping slightly.
But yeah, because generally speaking, they're doing it because it's something cultural that's in their family heritage and they've been brought up in that way. And it's not philosophical. So you can't convince someone with philosophy who's not at all interested in philosophy. And if they're just doing it because this is what we've always done, basically. So therefore I wish you the best of luck. But another question could be asked, why don't devotees, Vaishnava devotees, often, why don't they worship Lord Shiva, Shivaratri? And there's a few hints in this. One is that Krishna himself went to Ambika and he worshipped to observe Shivaratri, but not always. Sometimes Prabhupada says that Vaishnavas sometimes, or Nanda Maharaj sometimes would do something like that. But in Vrindavan, one of the most popular of all the deities is Gopishwar Mahadeva. Have you ever seen Gopishwar Mahadev? Have you ever seen Gopishwar Mahadev? Raise your hand if you've seen Gopishwar Mahadev.
See the half Krishna, half...
No, that's in Mayapur. There's Hari Haraya, I think. Deities, yes? In Mayapur? In Godrum. No, this is Lord Shiva as the he's the one who grants access to the rasa dance. And the gopis used to worship him. So in Vrindavan, all the Brijbasis love Gopishwar Mahadev, and there's also 4 different Shiva deities in Vrindavan that are very famous. They're called Dikpals, or the protectors of the directions. It's Kameshwar Mahadev, Chakaleshwar Mahadev, Gopishwar Mahadev, and Bhuteshwar Mahadev. But generally speaking, people aren't so philosophical. People in general aren't philosophical. But you could tell them a story of how Lord Shiva worships Lord Krishna, like in the Banasura pastime in the 10th canto, but then they'll take out the Shiva Purana and show that. Then you have to get into an epistemological discussion about the different Puranas, and they're in different modes of nature meant for different people. Yeah, good luck. Anyone else have any advice? Have any? It's got to do with the wedding of Lord Shiva to Parvati. But do your relatives associate with devotees? Yeah, that was. Where do they live?
They live in London.
Do they know how to speak with a Cockney accent? Here we go again. Yeah. Yes.
I read the Leela that...
I want to ask him to go to the manor and ask one of the devotees there. Because first of all, you're a relative, so, and they're older than you probably too, right? Yeah. Ask them to go to the manor. Have they been to the manor? Of course they've been to the manor.
Yeah.
What did they think?
I think it's a beautiful temple. Look at the externals, see how nice it is. And go inside, take darshan, go home, and pray to Shiva.
One time in Hong Kong, it was 1974. There were 2 Hindu temples in Hong Kong. One was on the Hong Kong side. One is on the Kowloon side. So of course, the question could be asked: why does there have to be 2? And the answer, of course, is one to go to and the other one to be against. But aside from that, the priest of the Hong Kong, Happy Valley, Hong Kong Hindu temple, was very, very nice. He was actually Punjabi too. And he was very, very, very nice, simple, not philosophical maybe, but when we first went to Hong Kong, he welcomed us, and he was quite good-hearted and kind. And so when Prabhupada came, he visited Prabhupada and asked him if he would visit the Happy Valley Hindu temple. So Prabhupada asked me, do you think I should visit? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, why? And he said, they worship Lord Shiva there. And then he got so, and you tell them not to worship Lord Shiva? He got very strong. And I said, no, but they worship him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he immediately said, no, then I won't go. So we shouldn't tell people not to worship Lord Shiva, but we should worship Lord Shiva correctly. And there's some prayers that's another one thing you can do, that you can give them the prayers to worship Lord Shiva from the Brahma Samhita. Yeah.
The pastimes of Daksha as well in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
Lord Shiva is mentioned as
Yeah. So let them, if you can go to the temple more often, be nice. Just if you're really clever, you'll figure out excuses for them, the reasons why they have to go to the temple, to get one of these for you and get one of those for you, and bring me some Mahaprasadam to pray for me. But we also used to see that all the shopkeepers in Hong Kong were worshippers of Lord Shiva too, but they didn't even bother. They were more interested in worshipping Lakshmi Devi. And before opening their shop, they'd first worship Lakshmi Devi and then the cash register. That was the system. Even they're laughing about it. Huh?
No money, no talk.
Mo Chin Mo Gong. Yes, you had a question.
There's the Leela of the saints that wanted to find out who was the Supreme, so that's pretty good movie to find out.
Yes.
Can you please share a summary of that story? I think it's nice.
Yes, okay. Yes. That's in the 89th chapter. You can ask Caitanya if I'm correct. 89th chapter of the 10th canto. About Bhrigu Muni. When they wanted, the sages performing a sacrifice wanted to find out who was the Supreme Lord. Was it Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva? So they decided to send Bhrigu Muni on this mission of discovery. So how are you going to test who is the Supreme? So they decided the measurement scale would be on tolerance, which is such an interesting supreme judgment criteria, isn't it? I mean, you wouldn't have thought of tolerance. What would you have thought? You'd think of power or wealth, but they said tolerance. This is he who is the most tolerant is the Supreme. So first Bhrigu Muni went to Lord Brahma and he insulted him by ignoring him, because he was Brahma was his father, Brahma was his brother. Both having come, he was
Father.
But Lord Shiva was also, they were brothers. Brahma was Bhrigu's, he must be his father, because everyone comes from Brahma. So he insulted him by ignoring him. So that's one level of insult. And Lord Shiva became very angry, and he was saved by Parvati, I believe. And then after insulting him, he decided to insult, no, not Parvati, he controlled his own anger. And then after insulting Brahma, he insulted Lord Shiva. Just imagine this mission. Your job is to insult everyone, all these powerful persons. Generally, we don't even need that as our mission. We just do it naturally. So then he insulted Lord Shiva by words. Lord Shiva was his brother, being both born from Brahma. Brahma was his father, and Lord Shiva was his brother. And then, so Lord Shiva wanted to embrace him in brotherly affection, and Bhrigu Muni said, "Don't touch me. I'm a Brahmana, and you are contaminated by the ashes coming from the crematorium. Don't touch me." And Lord Shiva became so angry, he was going to kill him immediately, and saved by Parvati, and things cooled down. So finally, the third of the ways of offending was by bodily. So if you want to, this is lessons on how to offend people. First, ignore them, which is very heavy actually. You ignore them, make believe they don't exist. Second, you insult them. And the third, you physically harm them. And Prabhupada actually said that's the worst offense against devotees, that never ever commit any physical violence against a devotee. So he, so Bhrigu Muni approached Lord Vishnu, and with his lotus foot, he kicked Vishnu in the chest. He kicked him. What an offense! Kick him with his foot. And Lord Vishnu responded, "Oh, thank you very much for blessing me with your lotus feet, and I'm sorry that my chest is so hard that maybe your foot became injured by kicking me." And in this way he excused himself and apologized, and Bhrigu understood from this that Lord Vishnu was the Supreme. But Lakshmi Devi never quite forgave Bhrigu Muni for this offense. But when you see the form of Lord Vishnu, he's marked with the footprint of Bhrigu Muni. Anyway, was that okay? Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, we shall end here, and we shall continue with. I'll just read the next line that will begin us. It will help us begin next week. The older Brahmana replied to all the dismissive words of the younger Brahmana when he had tried to offer his daughter to the younger Brahmana. "My dear boy," he said, "do not doubt me. I will give you my daughter in charity. I've already decided this." And the young Brahmana said, he was predicting the future, "You have a wife and sons, and you have a large circle of relatives and friends, and without the consent of all your friends and relatives, it is not possible to give me your daughter in charity." So we'll begin with that verse. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Nityananda Prabhu ki jai, Sri Advaita Acharya, Sri Girada Srivas Pandit, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Caitanya Caritamrta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare.